So before we get into actually, going through the mechanics of what content curation is, let's go through a few things that are important to understand. Content curation is not about going to someone's site, copying everything and posting it on yours. That's out and out stealing. That's out and out outside of the copyright laws. So in order to understand what you can do and what you can't do as a curator, you have to have a pretty good idea of what the copyright laws are and what they do. If I write an original piece of article, this is what the USA copyright law says. It's not the whole law. It's too long for me to go over right now. But reproduce a copyrighted work in copies, or get this, phono records. Prepare derivative works based on the copyrighted work, and distribute copies or phono records of the copyrighted work to the public by sale or other transfer of ownership by rental, lease, or lending. Now, it's important for you to understand that, because a copyrighted piece of information can be had, but you have to pay for it. So when you're curating your content, be extremely aware of what might be copyrighted and what isn't. For example, images. There are a lot of copyrighted images based on people's websites who are unaware. And one day the owner of that image is going to come to them and say, oh, you owe me X amount of dollars for using my image. So it's important to understand what the copyright laws are. Now let's talk about fair use. Because obviously, in the old days when you could go to the library and pull a book off the shelf and you were writing a thesis for university or whatever, rather than taking that little excerpt, you can take bigger excerpts, but before you copyright, before you curate anything from anything that is copyrighted, in the old days, it made good sense to go to the guy who owned it and ask for his permission. Now, today, the way things work is everything's online. Everybody has a share button on their website. Everybody wants you to curate their information because they know ultimately that'll drive traffic to their doorsteps as well. So to receive the complete protection of copyright laws, it's good to have a pretty good idea of what fair use laws are. And the fair use statutes came about simply because of the internet. It's just too much out there, and it was too hard to get a handle on it. So here we've got, based on the 1961 report of the Registrar of Copyrights on the general revision of the U.S. copyright law, blah, 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 you can use quotations of experts in review or criticism purposes. If you're illustrating that and you're curating content, you can use a quotation of a short passage. This is appropriate. Or you could use the material in a parody, or you can use a summary of it, in your article, or brief quotations in a news report. So you have to be very, very careful not to grab that guy's information and call it your own. So understand what the fair use policies are. When using an image, for example, don't use the full image. Protect yourself. Use a thumbnail of the image, and that is on with fair use type of policies. So how do you go about curating?